we're living in a world where there's no human touch anymore.
Yes.
There is, even from online dating to platform after platform after platform. Then there was COVID, then there's Zoom. There's all this stuff. And one thing that I kept saying to them is, you're on the phones because we service nationwide, right? But what are we missing? We are missing the human touch. You need to get out of this office one day a week and go meet the people here in our local area. Because one thing that we can provide that no one is providing anymore is the true human connection.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Motion of Gratitude podcast. I am so excited for the guests that I have here today. I feel like these last couple of months, I've just been introduced to some incredible people who are really living their life, running their businesses in a way that's it's heart-centered, but it's just so driven, and it's just been so incredible to just be in these spaces with these humans. So I am so excited to introduce you all to Courtney Murray. Good morning, Courtney. How are you?
Good, Shannon. Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to just seeing you again and talking with you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so Courtney and we actually met at Ben Newman's boot camp. So I believe I've talked about that a couple of times on the podcast since we've been, because it was so impactful. But Courtney was one of the presenters at the boot camp. And so Courtney is the owner of Coastal Capital. And so she is, what would you consider, so I know you're in the financial business, but what would you consider that Coastal Capital really does?
We're actually, we're a equipment finance broker as well as lender, and we're an advocate for business equipment finance as well as business finance, business loans, and helping small to mid-sized businesses expand, with knowledge on the finance spectrum, because it's something that I think is much needed in our society. So.
Yes, I agree. And I think your story resonated so deeply. I think I worked in the financial industry for a while. My husband's been in the financial industry. So you have this idea of how it works, and what you need in order to really get into and be supported by banks and financial businesses, if you're running a business. And your story that you shared at Ben's boot camp, it just felt like there was actually a human element to it that had been missing. And I was like, more people need to know that there are humans in this business. So it just resonated so deeply. And so I would love if you would share your story of how you got into that business and really share, what has really brought you on this path and really created this passion, because you have this beautiful fire within you to bring a different view of this industry. So I would love to share where that came from.
Awesome. I would love to share the story again. It's I always laugh because I can see behind me from this podcast, and I see this billboard that you can see.
Yes.
It says failure leads to success. So that was I always say embrace the base, because I didn't know this 40-foot picture was going up in Times Square. But I told this story. I told my story in this book. And it was a couple of years ago, the first time I actually told my truth of how I got into this industry. And so I was in my young years of my 20s, I was an entrepreneur. I started my own business. I had a clothing store, and I called it Chaos. And it really was chaos. So, but I started as a sole proprietorship, and I started on the foundation that my father was an entrepreneur. And I wanted to be the queen of my castle, per se. And so I started with very little knowledge, and I came upon it, and I said yes to an opportunity, which I believe I think every entrepreneur says yes to opportunities, right? And so I got into this clothing store with very limited capital, and I was I think I was 20. I might have just been 20. And I had only access to very limited credit cards. And my father came from a world where we have to remember credit algorithm and credit score was established in the 50s, 1958 to be exact. Fair Isaac score was created at that time. So my father came from knowledge of, you have the money, you utilize cash, and that's the only way to go. It's cash is king or nothing. So I learned from the capabilities of, if you don't have the cash, you don't move things forward. So when I moved into the clothing store, I had upfront costs, such as a sign outside, which was $15,000. I had a cash register that I needed to purchase, racking, inventory, marketing, advertising. Well, I started the store with such a little amount of capital that I had no knowledge of business credit or business financing. I didn't even know it was an option. And so 3 years into my endeavor and something I loved so desperately, we had some unfortunate fires in California. And there was a lot of smoke damage that came in, into the store because I had this old surf shop store that did not have insurance on it. I didn't have enough money to do these things, right? Well, I had only left enough capital to buy inventory, sell inventory. And I was doing an okay job, but it was something that I did not prepare for a rainy day. And so I had absolutely zero knowledge that my personal credit would be affected because I didn't understand business credit. I had not protected myself with an entity. I was a sole proprietorship. So that scored underneath my social security number. So all of these things, some of this might be a little bit foreign for people who haven't started a business, but when you start a business, there's knowledge that you should be able to gain. And that's understanding the elements of, where you can start structuring, the entities, even just starting at the entities, start building business credit to start establishing yourself outside of your personal credit. So my store, the collapse of my store, the 3 years that I was in it, and then the collapse, I always call it the chaos to capital. It got me and it led me to this business that showed me a different path. It was financing for entrepreneurs, business financing, understanding business capital. And I kept thinking, okay, I'm here, I'm understanding this, but what could I have done to save my position as an entrepreneur? So as I started learning, in sales, there's, different type of financing. I realized that there's such a need in our society for people to understand that there are ways for banks to look at underwriting. There's ways to get into an application process. There are ways to find funding for your business without having to give away everything you've ever worked for on your personal credit, and also not partnering with the wrong people who want to take equity in a business that you've worked so hard and desperately for. And so that claim to, fame of my first business that failed, it was my failed entrepreneurship, but it led me to the success path of leading other entrepreneurs down the road of understanding their different elements of finance so they can make a sound decision when they're moving forward as a business.
It's so helpful to even hear it explained that way. So I remember the first time I went to buy a car and I didn't have any debt. And they're like, well, you're going to have, it was like a 17% interest rate. And it's like, because I have no debt, I have to pay such a high interest. There was so much confusion. There was a lack of knowledge, there was, so I feel like from that point, it's like, okay, this is something you do have to understand. And you have to there are pieces to it. And to hearing you say that, okay, there are ways to do this without giving away your life savings or giving away all of your personal credit, because I think, and I guess there's two sides of it too, because there's businesses that are brick and mortar. And now you're seeing a lot of businesses now that are digital, or they're they're knowledge based, or they're coaching based, so and I think, we've talked a lot about this. I think there's a lot of women now who are going the entrepreneurial route. And so to be able to if we go in that direction, because I know you shared, there's not a lot of funding right now that's actually going towards women-run businesses. Is that correct?
Yeah. So about 3% of funding still goes towards women. And I don't think it's necessarily I sit on our bank, our board of banking advisors and so I do see a lot that happens in the industry, but it's not just from lack of saying yes to women. It's from lack of application flow. It's lack of women having that confidence to apply. And it's because they don't know what's out there. So you brought up a good point with the 17%. Something that, and I teach everybody in my office every day, is sometimes somebody will come to us and they'll get, let's say we have a 12% rate because that's what they qualify for business funding. Business funding is different than personal. So if you haven't started building your business credit, you still have to find a way to start establishing. But with business finance, it's so much different because you're generating ROI with something that you're doing, whether it's advertising or an asset that's generating ROI. And the interest becomes tax deductible, and it becomes a shelter for a business. So it's not the same as if you're buying something that doesn't generate income through your bank.
Yeah.
So when we have to, we create the knowledge for the customer to understand, like, if you're a profiting business, how much do you need to write off this year? Because you might need a little bit extra interest for that tax deduction. So there's things that go into it. But when it comes to women in business, there's so many women that, and I know myself included, it was so hard to pick up and say, I'm going to own another business, because my failure led to my credit personally crashing. Yeah. I had to get myself out of bankruptcy. I had to get things done that I didn't even know were going to be a constant. And that put, I felt like there was a sticker on me everywhere I went. Like, I have bad credit. Well, that's what I felt like. I felt like that defined me. And I think as growing mothers, people who want to stay home with their children, or let's say I work with a lot of veteran women who came out of the service, they hadn't established credit. It doesn't mean that they're not a good prospect to become a business owner or entrepreneur or to scale their business. It's that they don't have the knowledge of how to apply. So a lot of people apply for SBA backed loans. Well, SBA takes a lien on your full business, your assets, everything. A lot of people don't know that you can apply for financing. Let's say you just want a piece of equipment and maybe a line of credit through an advocate source that doesn't take that type of initiative over all of your assets. And so it's a knowledge, it's a true knowledge thing. And women like us, we are desperate for knowledge. We learn from one another. We learn from coaching and mentorship, and collaboration is the new currency. I always say that's my favorite thing to say. But in the finance world, if you don't have somebody walking you through the arms of finance, how are you going to make a sound decision? Sometimes bank finance is better than alternative financing, because you might need it to buy a brick and mortar building that we can't do something like that for. But why would you use a credit card and use your personal credit at 26%? Just because you think you might be able to make that payment and tie up your personal credit, when you can actually find funding for your business on a funding line and keep your personal credit for your personal assets. It's a lack of knowledge. And so for me right now, I'm creating a course for colleges. Beautiful. Trying to create that course. And it will start off by going into hopefully three colleges. We're creating it right now, but it's so important to me just to get the knowledge out to our youth, because they're our next entrepreneurs coming up. And they don't have this in business school right now. They don't have business finance in business school. Right.
So, so with that line of thinking, so as you're saying that there are different avenues. So let's say there's somebody listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm at this point, like my options are either I go to the bank and I start to tap into this personal credit, or what are my other options? Like, as I'm starting this process, how can I come from a place of starting on the right foot instead of having to backpedal?
Sure. And so I'll use just actually something that happened this week. We have a client that came to us. She's only 2 years in business and woman-owned business, and she wants a piece of equipment. It was $85,000, and her credit score is in the dumps. And it was really in the dumps, way below our minimum credit criteria. But what she did is she started off by getting contracts and making cash flow. So we ended up getting her approved for an $85,000 truck because she had cash coming into her business. So instead of saying, I'm not going to apply and use my cash, she actually had the knowledge to come in, because she worked with one of our advocates and understood that there was an option. So people coming in, I always say apply. It's so easy. It's an application and bank statements. We can do anything with startup. Even if you have no banks yet and you just have an idea, we can give you an idea of where you can start and help from there. Working with an advocate really helps, but I always say, if you're at a starting point, you have to find, let's say you're an online business. I mean, it costs money even just to get the podcast microphone and your equipment up. It doesn't matter if you have an asset for your business and it's an equipment base, you can finance it. It doesn't matter what it looks like. As long as it's an asset that's producing in your business. Let's say it's a cheerleading gym and they have a floor that they have to put down. That's an asset. That's still something that's performing and bringing money. But if it's just cash to bring advertising or marketing to the company, then we want to look at some cash flow. So you have to have cash flow being generated. So there's a difference between financing a product and then cash flow. And so those are the two steps. But we have everything, and any advocate out there has anything from just an application to apply, whether it's a line of credit, SBA. We can walk you through the things that it takes for SBA, which takes financials. But if it's just equipment or just a quick fixed cash, then it just takes an application and a conversation. And then you at least know where to start. It should not be a dead stop, because the thing is, you have people who can coach you through what it takes to get to the next step. And let's say you want a 5% interest rate, which is unheard of right now. So let's want something like that. Let's figure out a way. Where do we need your personal credit to score? Where do we need your business credit to score? So we don't have to commingle your personal credit. So there's things that you can learn throughout. And I just say, if you're brand new in business or you're at that expansion point, reach out and ask someone, because it's the knowledge that you gain that gets you better as you grow. And if you don't gain the knowledge, then you don't know where to start in the first place. And that's what happened to me. For 3 years, if I had known something like this existed, I would never have put the cash out for all of the assets that I had. I would have utilized it. And my best example is, why would you ever pay for an employee before they start working for you? Why would you pay for an asset cash before it started generating income? You're a business, so you have to cash flow.
Yes. So how do you find out? Can you find out what your business credit score is? Like, is it a separate score for your business versus personal? No. How do you find that out?
So the thing is, there's quite a few different platforms. There is PayNet, which is a big one that's used a lot. PayNet or Paydex. There is Dun & Bradstreet, and a lot of people are familiar with the DUNS number, but unless you have a DUNS number or apply and pay for the DUNS, they don't report. I mean, it's like a catch-22. So DUNS is okay, but PayNet is something that always reports. Business Experian always reports. So Business Experian is something that you can get. You can pay for the service, or you might be able to get your score for free. But Business Experian is great because they report everything from your credit cards to, even if you put one of your utility bills, it will report a utility bill. So remember, if you have a federal tax ID number, it's the same digits as your social. Use that to apply for your phone. Start building a business credit by utilizing that federal tax ID for your utilities, your cell phones. All of those things, and start building from there. It's small, but it's something. And you want to get your Paydex or PayNet score, high, just like you want your personal credit. And then your risk factors come down. And so, I started my business, and my risk factor, we're a finance industry, so we don't borrow a lot of money. We're more service-based. But I had to start borrowing to grow my business. And in order to take that risk score of high level risk score down to now I'm a level 1 risk score, it took a little bit of moving. I had to get business credit cards and things like that. But you only get the limit as you grow, just like personal credit. Right.
That's really helpful to understand. And so the other thought that comes up, because you're talking about these advocates and they sound like wonderful people like yourself. So it's like, when somebody is starting the business, it's like, what are they looking for when they look for advocates? Like, is there a certain terminology? It's like, how would they even find somebody like you to support them? Because I think so many of us just know, like, I'll just go to my bank. And we know that might be one direction that they get taken. So like, how can they even identify who those advocates are?
Sure. So when it comes to banks are brick and mortar. We're always going to see them. You're going to be able to walk by. Your personal banker or your business banker, they only know a certain amount because they're under bank guidelines. So my first approach to any of that, I mean, obviously I'm Coastal Capital. We're always going to have advocates here. But when you're looking for an advocate, I always look for somebody who I know broker has a funny name when it comes to mortgage and things, and actually positions. And so you get educated from a broker, but you want to do your due diligence. Make sure that they've been in business for over 2 years. That's something that you can look up from the state. Make sure that they are someone. I like family owned style broker shops. and make sure that they do some of their own portfolio lending, that they know enough about it. You want to just do your background just like you would do on anything else.
Yes.
And we're a phone call away. We love to give information out there. We're advocates of, because we're relationship based. We believe in those relationships. So if you need direction, we're always happy to give it out there. But brokers in the equipment finance world or working capital world, they can help a lot of the times, but you just want to make sure that they're sound, because again, there's a dime a dozen, just like mortgage companies out there. And so it can be a little scary. Just make sure that you're working with a legitimate company.
And just from this, I feel like we've, what is it, 2 months since we met you, but just that's how we felt, just even having conversations with you and just being able to, because I think a lot of the times, and I think a lot of fear comes from like, well, if I start a conversation, then that kind of locks me into a process, And so I think there's this fear in even beginning that process where it's like, you've created a space where people can come ask questions, gain knowledge, and not feel this like, oh, now I have to do something, or like there's this kind of put into this like channel now, like, okay, this is where you're going to go. So just speaking to you and your husband, it's like, it's just been this beautiful way that you guys have created this knowledge space. And I think you said it so beautifully, like this collaboration, it is our currency. We've come into this world where like when we all work together and we kind of share this knowledge, there's so much power that comes with it. And so just speaking from our own experience with you and Coastal Capital, it's just been a beautiful way to navigate. Because like I was a stay-at-home mom, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this on the side. And then you get to a point where you're like, wow, this is turning into something where I'm going to have to think about it from a different perspective, right? So there is this fear that comes in of like, who am I, right? Who am I to then say like, I need this money to grow something into a business? Because business, I think, looks so different these days than it used to, where it was all, more brick and mortar. So just to have that space to really ask questions and explore and to learn from your experience and your knowledge. It's such a gift. So, one, thank you from that experience.
It's funny that you brought that up, because today I just, right before this call and podcast, I was like, we had this meeting and I said to my team, I said, it's so important that we're living in a world where there's no human touch anymore.
Yes.
There is, even from online dating to platform after platform after platform. Then there was COVID, then there's Zoom, there's all this stuff. And one thing that I kept saying to them is, you're on the phones because we service nationwide, right? But what are we missing? We are missing the human touch. You need to get out of this office one day a week and go meet the people here in our local area. Because one thing that we can provide that no one is providing anymore is the true human connection and that collaborative connection. I started thinking last night, we have we financed a big car wash. He's opening 8 locations, and he has one that's getting financed right now. And he was texting my husband over the weekend because they have such a great partnership. He was texting him what the car wash is doing for his, cash flow. And he was texting cat pictures. And I was like, this is awesome that you have this kind of foundation with somebody, and it's constant with the clients that we choose to work with, but we can choose to give away what we know, which is knowledge, to gain access to better and bigger entrepreneurs as we walk through life and see how they've grown. It doesn't just because we gave advice and maybe that changed their life, that means that advice went somewhere. And that's what the meaning of all of it is, right? That's to help other people. And so it's, for us, it's no skin off our back to give them knowledge of what it takes to gain, because eventually they'll want to work with us or partner with us if we're going to give them something like that, and vice versa. We want to work with people who want to work with us, to be partners. And so that's so important.
Yes. And that is what feels so different. Like I feel like so much for me is wanting to come back into this human element, because especially these last couple of years, it's been missing so much. And I think we all feel it, we feel this lack of connection, and to find businesses who are operating from that space, I think puts you in such a different place, because people want it, they want that human element. Like, I have tried to fix things on the internet and gotten moved from robot to robot, and I'm like, just and talk to an operator. Like, you're at a point where these businesses, you can't even talk to a human anymore, because they've gotten so kind of disconnected from that space. And it's like, I just seeing that life is coming back there, and businesses that come back there are just creating these opportunities to help people in a way that I think's been missing for a while. And it just creates such an impact. And we've felt that since the moment we met you all. It just felt different, especially in the finance business. It's not something that you see. Yes.
I love it.
Exactly. Yes. So the last thought that comes up, as you kind of look back on your journey and you look at these courses that you're building, like, what is one piece of advice that you would share with somebody, like, as you're getting started? It's like, if you could set a foundation of this in your business, this would kind of, and I know all businesses are different, but like, this would really set the foundation to allow you to move in a direction that would be a strong starting point.
So the biggest piece of advice I would give any entrepreneur, mostly starting up, is remember to not base anything on a credit score. Base it on the depth of your credit. And so let's say you have a perfect 800 credit score, or perfect 800 plus credit score, but you only have one small trade line open for $500. You can't apply for a $200,000 finance because you have a good credit score, because it doesn't show that you know how to pay that type of payment. So we have to look at the personal credit. Even though we don't determine on the personal credit, we're trying to build the business credit. If you're starting off, start with what you've already been able to do. So if you financed a car for $30,000, you know that you can probably apply for $30,000 because you've already been able to pay a trade line of that amount. Okay. So when you start a business, be realistic. Don't come to an advocate or even to a bank or any financial underwriter and think that credit score plays the same type of play that it does going into a car dealership. So they might base it more on score because they know that vehicle is going to get you to and from work. But we're looking at an asset or a loan that's going to take your business into a generating income platform. Yeah. But we have to make sure that the risk is mitigated. And so what makes sense? So that is the biggest thing when you're starting a business. Don't say no to yourself. Don't let a no define you. Apply anyway, see where you're at. It's only a soft pull on your credit. It won't affect a mortgage. It won't affect anything personally, and it won't report to your personal credit. So if you apply, it's not going to affect any of those things. The only thing it's going to do is gain you knowledge. And so I say never don't apply, and just be cognizant of what your credit, looks like. So you're not over applying for something. Find something in your means.
Beautiful. So how can people connect with you? So I know you've got your location in Florida, but if they're listening to this and saying like, okay, I need these advocates, I need someone like this in my life, how can they connect with you?
So coastalcapital.com is our website, and you can apply anywhere online or just to talk with us. Coastal Capital is spelled coastal like the coast of Florida, and capitals with a K because I'm Courtney with a K. And then I'm also at CourtneyMurray.com, and my name has no U. So we have some strange spellings here, but I know you'll probably drop it in the podcast for us. So yes. Either way, you can schedule an appointment or chat with one of us. We have live chat as well. We have great advocates in our office. I've taught them from ground up, so they know the ins and the outs, and they're here to help. So
beautiful. Yeah, and I hope anybody who's listening, if you do find yourself in this place where you know that it's time to kind of turn this into a business, like you've been playing with the idea of it, Kortney is not only, I'm sure you can feel her heart in this conversation, but to meet her in person and to see the conviction that she has around what she is building. These are the people you want in your corner. These are the people you want in your life. So know that they exist, know that they're out there. And that's really been the point of this podcast, to really connect people with real businesses and people that can support you on this journey, who have just decided that they're gonna do these journeys and run their businesses the way that feels most aligned. So Kortney, thank you so much. This has been, even for me, I'm making so many mental notes about all these things, and it's just been such a gift to get to know you, and I'm excited for more people to find you and know that you're there as an advocate, because I think it's, so many of us need it, so many people are looking for it, but they don't know where to start. So thank you for making it simple, making it easy, and really providing the education and letting that be the starting point. So thank you very much.
So much fun. Thank you so much for having me. I loved this.
Good. Yes, me too. So All right. Yes, I think, that feels like we just covered so many beautiful pieces, and it's just been such a pleasure to talk with you. And I look forward to connecting with all of you on the next podcast, and I will make sure to include all of Courtney's information in Coastal Capital so you have everything there. So I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. We'll talk to you again next week.